All right, 7 o'clock. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start off. Do we have any changes to our agenda this evening? All right, hearing none. Do the report.
Alrighty. Starting off with sports, basketball is still going strong. In December, we had a few stretchers in the gym, so let's hope that stays away from us. But the basketball teams are doing well. Let's hope they can pick up some wins. The first week of February is Hoops for Hope, which is an event that supports cancer. It's a very good community event. Everyone shows up to it and supports. That's the 6th and the 7th. Honor Clubs, NHS donated 360 pounds of non-perishable food and hygiene products to local food shelters. They're now working on planning an alumni panel. If any of you are interested, please let us know. The student council has also been having a lot of people come into their meetings, just hearing about the change they want to see within the school. It's always great to see guests within the student council meetings, and the student council will be planning a pep rally for Hoops for Hope. Right now, actually, they are. Theater, One Act Play, the One Act Play is coming up in March, and actually the Thespian Society is hosting a One Act Play festival this year at Leland and Gray. So that's in full preparation and full speed ahead planning that. Intensives. Intensive week is the second week in March. A lot of students are fundraising by doing Chuck-a-Duck and other events. I know the students are very excited and very amped up for that. Band and course auditions for the All-State happened last weekend. If they get in, they will stay for 2 days in the Burlington area and perform with the top people in the state, or the top students in the state. Winter sports, winter activities. Our winter activities kicked off last week, and that's 6 Wednesdays in the weeks, or in the months of January and February, so students love that. And then academics, semester 1 is kicking off to an end this week, and then semester 2 starts next week. And Spirit Week was a success. The juniors won. But students worked together to plan skits and play games, and it was a fun way for the school to kind of celebrate. And yeah.
Thank you. Questions? Anything else?
The girls do have a game, so I'm gonna go to that. Have fun.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Do we have any public comment that we want at the beginning of the meeting? We will allow some public comment during the discussion points later on in the meeting. But if there's something not on the agenda that the public would like to speak to, now would be your time. Don't see any. So we'll move into executive session. Can I get someone to?
I make a motion to move into executive session to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage, and to enter executive session to discuss a contract under 1 VSA 3131A.
Give a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Who does the chair wish to invite into the executive session?
The administration and representative from Western Transportation.
Greg as well.
Greg as well.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of executive session.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that the chair be allowed to sign the agreement with Western Transportation as discussed in executive session.
Good.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving down to old business, family surveys. Lindsay, you wanna?
Yeah, so Bob and I have met on this. We got some feedback regarding this, and I had some more work I wanted Samson to do on it. So he is looking at that, and he is going to sort of de-aggregate that a little bit into something that we feel we can actually use better, and we'll have more on it soon.
And I would say that we definitely, there were some themes that I think just you and I looking at the raw data we pulled out that we feel like are areas that we can identify as both positives and areas to improve in. We had a less than stellar response on the homeschool surveys, but we're strategizing some follow-ups on that. But yeah, we were finishing our meeting, talking about what was next, and Samson kind of wandered by the office. And so he's our IT and data specialist, so he came in and was like, yeah, I'd be happy to blah, 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 blah. So he's gonna work on that part, and we'll hopefully have something for the February meeting to share out. But
Any other discussion on that? All right. Now, down to the budget update. We'll start with the Windham letter from the board.
yeah, so the Windham School District for many years has received a payment from West River Board to subsidize busing for secondary students. That amount was based on a formula that Lori Garland had worked on years ago, and minimal change to that over the years, but I think everyone's tightening their belts, and the Windham District got together as a board to craft a letter to ask for an increase in that amount. And we shared with them, or Heidi shared with them the calculation and the formula, and they ran their own numbers and assessments, and they have proposed a certain dollar amount, which is in the letter from them. And I would say after looking at it, and Heidi looked at it, I looked at it, and I think very good enough. But in short, I think it's our recommendation from the administration for you to accept that suggestion from them and increase the payments to the Windham District to help subsidize secondary transportation for the Windham students who come to Windham. Now, the interesting side is that that bus that comes out here also brings tuition-bearing students to Townhouse Elementary School. So it's kind of a double bonus for both sides, really. But I think it's our recommendation that you would accept that amount that they have put forth based on the calculation.
Discussion. Yeah.
So I, as a parent in the school district, often am getting emails. I don't know about often, that's an exaggeration, but I have gotten emails in the past, is what I mean to say, about random days where the Windham bus is not running. And I just wanted to clarify that if that happens, so far so good, like that's okay for our students when that is something that's going on, and that we're not, we're still paying like mileage, so it's irrelevant to us financially. But just knowing that exists, and I don't know, is there anything that we should know, or is there?
I mean, I think that happens, it's happened in Dover as well. And in fact, it's happened here from time to time with a run. There's just no drivers. There's no substitute drivers, there's no backup. So if somebody has something that requires them to miss it, there's not a backup plan. In Windham, I think the backup plan has been that the Jamaica bus stops at the bottom of the hill in West Townsend, and families just have to get them to and from the store, and that has worked. I'm putting that in quotes, those that can't see me. But that's that's been the solution because there's just no drivers. So.
And if I could just, for the most part, Cord knows, like, all of his days when the school year starts. So the parents generally get an email at the start of the year, and you know, like, all year what days you're not gonna have a bus. So it's very rare that it's Oh, surprise, you have no bus. So,
Thanks.
Seems beneficial to everybody then.
So
he picks up kids on the hill that are like considered Jamaica, cause you know, the hill's in 3 towns. So he picks up Jamaica and Townsend students as well.
Dana, what is the exact figure they're looking for?
$11,760.
Okay.
Which is in essence up from
$7,800.
700,000, so yes.
Yeah, because I saw the 28,500 and I thought, well, are they asking for?
No, they're explaining their cost, the overall cost,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Good.
So, I'm sorry, that was from 7,800 to 11,000, so we're talking about $3,000 differential? Is that
Yeah.
essentially it? Okay. I certainly don't have any problem with that. But I would also suggest that maybe we should just make this a formal process every year where the adjustment is just made based on current rates.
Sure, yeah, however you wanna word it, that makes sense. So you're saying the current rate of the mileage at that point in time?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
I just wanna point out that then this calculation of 0.70 per mile is already incorrect.
Ah.
Because it went up to
How about whatever the correct?
72 cents a mile, I believe now,
Got it. I'd say, yeah, whatever
So
the
2.5.
and a half,
the correct IRS mileage rate is.
based on these.
Adjusted annually for this. Something like that for the emotional.
We just mid-year technically, right?
Yeah, so
Calendar-
is it
it's a calendar year
starting
rate.
currently, or is it starting for the next school year? That's my next question. We have not paid them that yet this year. Usually it's around March that I send them the payment, so are we,
Oh, is it just one?
it's a
one-time
one-time
annual
payment
reimbursement?
towards the end of the year.
Got it. And then when does the new rate come out each year?
January 1st.
January 1st. Yeah, so I mean, doesn't it make sense that when the new rate comes out in early January, that
We
the
base that payment.
March payment is adjusted to that new annual rate?
That's the motion. Okay.
We could budget for it.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Yeah, I agree with Al. We should probably reevaluate it every year because the situation may change on Windham where bus driver may be a bus driver or may not be a bus driver, and the situation will definitely change out. Or they can't keep a bus running, and then we'll have to.
Well, they just got a brand new bus, so.
It's not
Well,
brand
Brand new to
New to
that.
that.
Just to be clear, I just made the motion to adjust the rate. I mean, in that situation, then,
Okay. All right,
Provided
so-
that transportation is being provided, kind of thing.
right.
Yeah. Anything else? Abigail.
Thank you all very much, and I appreciate your consideration. I couldn't agree more that it shouldn't be anything that's confusing every year. So if we had something in writing that was clarified, it would just make it much easier for us to collaborate. That's just what I wanted to ensure. So thank you all very much.
For those who don't know, Abby is the chair of the Windham District Board.
All right, we ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I will put a contract together for the next meeting that you can sign, and then we can take it to the Windham board. Does that sound okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's flip the next two and talk about the timeline before we talk about the budget documents. I think that will help set the stage a little bit better.
So you have a document which looks like this. I've already made some adjustments to my copy. I may have just lost, or Andrew stole it, I'm not sure. Just kidding. So yeah, so basically this is a sort of an annual timeline. We use it at the office to plan the development of the annual report. But we also use it to plan out the meetings and the warnings and all of that for the timeline. So this is a draft, as it says at the top, so please notice those question marks and things. But if we start, work our way backwards from the annual meeting, the Australian ballot date, you can see that we would have, let's skip the special meeting for a second. The informational meeting, which has to be 3 to 14 days prior to the annual meeting, would be scheduled probably Monday, would be the 30th. And the regular meeting for March would be March 9th, which would be the last regular meeting. You could choose to combine those and do your last regular meeting on the 30th. Just move your March meeting and then you kind of 2 birds with 1 stone there. And the reason that you could do that is that the deadline for warning, or your deadline for adopting the articles is actually well before that. So we have to get stuff to the printers and so on and so forth. So the deadline for board adoption, if you look at it from the standpoint of getting it warned, would be somewhere in the window of 2/23 to 3/09. You could adopt them earlier and we can warn them during that window. And so the February meeting could be, if you didn't want to add extra special meetings, not extra special, extra special meetings.
We know they're extra.
You know what I meant? Then that could be your timeline. You could use it as sort of a stopping point for trying to adopt by then. And then if you aren't able to, then you could have something later in February as well that could be within that window. It is the hope that we have, the 9th is really more ideal, because from the turnaround we need to get the documents into the annual report to the printer brings it back to us, and then we distribute it to all the places we distribute it to. Takes a little bit of time. And so if we want it in people's hands in a month or so prior, that February 9th soft deadline, I'll call it, is probably a good target date for you guys for a budget adoption and your article adoption. So that's my suggestion. Whether or not you push the March meeting to the 30th or not, or have a regular meeting and an informational meeting, is up to you. But those are some things to kind of play with.
Any questions on what we have for a timeline? Everybody okay with targeting our February 9th meeting for budget adoption?
Yeah.
Because depending on what happens tonight, you could also add something in between those two if you needed to, if you had to.
All right.
So that, if that feels like a good soft deadline, do you want to make a decision about the March thing now, or do you want to wait?
See how the budget discussion goes.
Okay. All right. All right. No decision. Yeah.
Correspondence.
All right, so we'll start with our budget documents. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'm just gonna do an overview of the Windham Central Supervisory Union budget. That's, so everybody is aware of that. And then we can move into a narrative that I put together on the West River budget and some of the overview that I put together. So you will find a budget summary for the Windham Central Supervisory Union budget. It was approved and adopted on November 19th with that board. So you will see, I'll give you a little background. So historically, there have been 4 separate budgets on a Windham Central level. There was a supers budget, there was a ECSE, which is early childhood education budget. That's special ed for children under the age of 6. That we had the MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, which is its own budget with students that were in K through 12. And then we had the fee for service, which impacted only certain schools. The board made a decision this year to combine and go to 2 budgets for simplicity going forward. The fee for service, most of that is being absorbed by specific budgets. For instance, your PE teacher is shared with River Valley, so she was paid at a Windham Central and then billed back or through the assessments for River Valley and West River. So currently going forward, the PE teacher, the amount of time, the FTE that she is working in West River is now in the West River budget, no longer going through Windham Central's budget. The early childhood has been combined with the multi-tiered system of support, so all special ed, all academic support, it's all in the multi-tiered system of support budget. So that's one budget. The supers budget has now become the general fund budget, and the only things left in there that are targeted specific to schools is the West River transportation, because we are supposed to be we have to report transportation, and we're supposed to be paying transportation at an SU level. So that is something that still will go through. River Valley pays a portion of that back to Windham Central for their part of the Dover Run and the Wardsboro Elementary School. But then West River has the largest amount for transportation. And then professional development still goes through the Windham Central, and your assessment includes that to Windham Central. So with those changes, the other big piece of a change that everybody should be aware of is how let me explain. So historically, prior to the census block grant, which is our special ed money, we had to apply for reimbursement for special education. Therefore, there was individuals, for instance, payroll, HR, that were partly FTE in the supers budget and partly in special education, because we could get reimbursement for part of the fact that payroll, there's a big chunk of payroll that was for special education. That no longer happens, and it's been several years, and this combining of the different budgets, it made sense to move people back to where they should be. So the general fund budget for expenses, you will see, is up 10.4%. Part of that is because rather than having payroll partly in MTSS and partly in the supers budget, or what now is the general fund budget, they're just completely in the general fund budget. So all of my business office staff are fully in the general fund budget, as well as some of the directors that just deal with, I should say, not student facing. Those that are special education, AST, the director of those, the director of SEL is 100% in the MTSS budget. So we've tried to make that split. We have made that split. This year is going to be the most confusing with that budget because it doesn't look the same. So the 10.4% is due partially to the bringing all of the FTEs together that should be into the general fund. Just a little explanation on that. So revenue is up for the general fund budget by just under 5%. Expenses are up 10.4%. The local cost has gone up to 48%. And so the board made a decision to use $100,000 of fund balance to decrease part of those allocations that are coming from the different school districts. The multi-tiered system of support budget, the revenue is up 6.42% from mainly extraordinary cost reimbursement. So we're losing approximately from this budget year $700,000 in grant funds next year. Some of that has been carryover that we have been able to use. but some of those are title funds that we're not expecting the federal government to give out for this coming year. So while we were managed to keep the expenses of the MTSS budget down to 3.4%, the loss of that revenue cannot be made up other than in a local budget. So the board agreed to use $800,000 of its fund reserve to buy down what would have been a 48% increase overall to a 21.89% increase to be shared by all the local school districts. And the local school districts, special ed, or the MTSS budget, the allocations are based on your full enrollment, because students that are from your towns, even if they go to private schools, if they have special ed needs, we are expected to cover those costs or provide services. With the general fund budget, which includes a technology in there, it is done by the students in the chairs for the towns that have the schools, or the elementary level kids for the 2 towns that are non-operating. Because of those 2 towns don't pay the technology assessment, Stratton and Windham, they just pay for the business office because they're still getting our services based on the number of students that are K through 6. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of the SU budget. I did put in a sheet, I assume it's in here, that shows the allocations.
Next page.
It's the next page, okay. I did catch one thing that I wanted to point out. I did print new pages if anybody wants one, but West River's costs are actually less because as we've gone through the after-school programming, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, it's actually reduced down to 100,000. So let me just pull out my sheet. Oh, okay. So the amount of money that West River is increasing and what their costs are $331,346. It is a 7.12% increase.
Instead of the 8.76.
Correct. And I do have those sheets if you want them. Okay.
This is the tricky part, is that those expenditure percentage increases don't necessarily, well, they definitely don't, they definitely don't connect to the assessment percentage increase
Correct. These are based on,
because of the loss of revenue.
right.
That's not news to people, right? You guys know what I'm talking about when I say that? If you have a question, please say so. I'm making some assumptions there. Okay.
So going into West River's budget, we've met, I think, 4 times as a budget committee, and the principals and administration all trying to figure out how to reduce. When I first went to the board, the budget committee, our long-term weighted ADM, which is the average daily membership, the enrollment of students, based on an October date, was a little bit lower than what it's turned out to be. But in the end, to try to get to the threshold, and so again, last year was the first year of the state reinstating the excess spending threshold that was in legislation and was being used prior to COVID, and then it was waived for a while and now it's back in place. You might remember from last year, my explanation is when you are over your threshold, you're double taxed on that amount on your per pupil spending. So our goal is to try to meet that per pupil spending. This year, the number was put at $16,470. So after 4 meetings and looking at trying to reduce by $1 million to see if we could get into a place where we could use some reserve funds and trying to have the least amount of student impact, we have this sheet, this overview that I can go over real quick, unless you want to do it, Bob, either way.
I can do it. You can be during
take
the
a
other stuff. You can take a
okay,
break and read a
okay,
little bit.
good.
Can I just interrupt for a sec? Could you be
Yeah.
really, I'm sorry, Drew, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to be really explicit about what we're looking at, the document we're looking at since I'm online. And just say what the heading is.
This one says West River FY 2027 budget overview with 11226 top.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Yep. So this is a document that the budget committee will recognize a little bit in the structure of it. So as we worked with the budget committee, we tried to look at the budget through three lenses: elementary, secondary, and things that were district-wide. And so this is laid out the same way. So the first third of it is the elementary. And so this shows just some increases and some decreases that are in the budget. And this is comparatively to last year. And just for the benefit of everybody, I'll just review them real quick, because these are things that have been discussed about extensively with the budget committee, but not everyone's been part of that. So part of the budget draft that you have in front of you has a supposition that JVS is not operating. And as such, the pre-K classroom that is there, the second part of that supposition is that it's not existing somewhere else. So that we're going to one pre-K classroom in the district. So in this model, a teacher, a para, and an administrative assistant currently, those positions, not the people, but the positions currently at JVS would be eliminated, and there's a savings of $217,000 change. Additional savings from other supplies and stuff for the current JVS 4600. Two reductions in general music and in art of 0.1 FTE each, one for music from 5 to 4 and art from 7 to 6, is netting you just $21,000 in savings. We were very clear, as we talked about this in the budget committee meetings, that in both those situations, there's a very, very minimal impact to services to kids, and it does not impact the actual specials time that elementary students get with those teachers. The farm school program was another program that exists exclusively in Newbrook, which was pulled out at $9,290. The belief at the time was, the conversation was that was an integral part of what Newfane is and the model that they offer and how they operate. But that might be something they would have to consider doing some fundraising for. Similarly, reduction in the enrichment line for the elementary schools, which funds things like Key Wade and the circus. Taking $5,000 out of that leaves $7,500 for each school. There's an increase. You may recall this at last year's budget time. You guys took out the tuition payments for students that previously from JVS who were going to Wardsboro. We put those back in this time because it was a real cost that you incurred this year. And so it's updated with the new RVSD tuition rate. And so not all the students that were there are staying. There's some that are aging out as well. So.
This is only showing two students actually attended.
And then the next big increase, as you can tell, is this goes back to what Heidi was talking about. This is the elementary portion of the MTSS budget for primary, which is, you can see, is a 21.8% increase over last year, which as we described, it doesn't align with the actual expenditure increase, but that's because of the loss of revenue. So you can see the total cost of increases and decreases for the elementary are both totaled up below. Any questions on elementary before I go into the district-wide stuff?
Are we gonna repurpose that one teacher, one administrative assistant, and one para?
So the positions in this model are eliminated. The people, depending on what contract they might be in, might get repurposed, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but we're still paying their salaries and healthcare and stuff. They don't disappear.
Three positions will.
Three
go
positions
away.
would go away.
Right.
Who
So-
that will be is
Yes.
is the question.
So it wouldn't necessarily be those three people, but three positions would go away. So if we would not be continuing to pay their salaries and benefits because there'd be a shift somewhere else potentially. We're just not at liberty at this point to
Figure out.
to know who that is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Any other elementary questions? All right, for the district-wide stuff, we do have the negotiated salary increases for certified staff, which was the 5.5% that the board negotiated with the staff for next year. Included in that dollar amount, I believe, no, that's just the 5.5%, right?
That is just the 5.5% that's increased, yes.
There's an amount set aside for negotiations for support staff. There's healthcare increases, there's dental increases. Those are all sort of contractual. We did pull out money for capital projects. We left $50,000 there, just in case of major events. And that had sort of moved as the different budget committee meetings met. But that's $205,000 out. We took money out of the laughter and summer programming. There's a grant that they've received that is a 5-year grant. So by taking out $76,000 still leaves the $100,000 in local money plus the money from the grant, which Jamie has described for the budget committee. Has some changes to service, a little bit less time here, there, a little bit less time here, but generally the same level of service, if you will, for summer and after school. But slightly shorter times and such. So in the library department, we just to clarify this, so we have currently 1.5 FTEs of school librarian that serves the 3 schools. And 0.5 is shared between the 2 elementaries, and the 1 is here. So what we're purporting to do is to eliminate the half of a librarian, half an FTE, and half the full-time librarian shared between the elementary and Leland and Gray. We feel like that, again, doesn't change the service for the elementary students. They still get their, in essence, a day a week of library at the elementary schools, which is what they get now. And so what it does, though, is it creates a situation where the Leland and Gray library for 2 days a week would be empty. And so just below it, you see what we've added is in essence, a para type level position, which would fill in those 2 days at Leland and Gray to provide so the library can still remain open. And on the other 3 days, be a built-in substitute for Leland and Gray or other buildings as needed, but Leland and Gray has a lot of need for that. And so there's an added cost for that, but you still see a net savings of $40,000 without really the reduction in service. So it's kind of one of our creative solutions here. We took the building ops out of JVS. We kept insurance on there because we just weren't sure of the timeline. Again, so this is the whole district-wide. This is the general fund budget assessment from the SU, which is up $245,000. Again, a higher percentage than the actual expenditure rate, as Heidi already explained. And then some insurance costs have increased, and that's not employee insurance, right?
No, these are like
These
building costs,
buildings,
insurance, or
vehicles, that
just
sort of thing.
workers, workers' comp, yeah.
Different variety of different things. So you can see there's some adds and some subtracts there. Any questions on the district-wide category before I move into secondary?
Quick question. So the 82,000 for the building insurance at JVS, if JVS closes.
That's reducing 82,000 from the budget. It only leaves the amount needed for
Right,
insurance.
which is around 45.
So it's taking out all the other operational costs.
So even if it closes, there's no chance.
That's a reduction.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because it's on the next page, we should have a heading.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, yeah, headings didn't continue.
That's a reduction.
It's a decrease.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, my bad on that, headings. Any other district-wide questions? All right, for the Leland and Gray, we have, well, in essence, without getting too much deep into the staff, we're reducing our offering of Spanish by half because that individual will be taking on driver's education as a driver's education teacher is retiring. And so there's a savings of some money there from that. There is a reduction in service there, that's something we're gonna be clear about, in Spanish. There's a reduction of a third of a position in English, there's a third of a position that exists, and that person is moving on, so it's by attrition. And the same thing with the Spanish one, of course, because of the retirement. And in music, there's a 0.7 FTE reduction as well. Leland Gray currently has 2.7 FTEs of music, and as I've told the story a couple times, but I'll tell it again. Leland Gray historically had 2 FTEs of music. One was driven towards band, and one was driven towards chorus. And the elementary schools had a 0.7 instrumental that was in addition to the general music teacher that does the special. This was just for instrumental. When that person retired a few years back, we couldn't fill a position, and so Leland Gray took on starting the instrumental in 6th grade, which is what happens in some places, in some states across the country, other than in comparison to the 4th, which is what we've been doing historically. And eventually we were able to staff a position here to help support that. And so that money ended up being moved into the secondary budget, even though it was really designed for early instrumental. But with decreased numbers and such, that was something that we reduced. And then there was a reduction of $25,000 from the supplies for the intensives program, but the Journey Away fund balance has 190 or so in that, and so we were going to try to use some of that to offset that. So their actual supply line would not go down, it wouldn't affect them, it's just that we would use some of the reserve money to offset that. The next line is, I'm just going to come back to that because that's been a conversation. And I'm not sure that that's over, but the next 2 lines are funds that are money that we provide for different types of services through our contracted services line. VEMSA, of course, is the EMS Academy down the street. We have recently been contributing, contracting with them for about $20,000 worth of service, and it's varied from year to year for what that covers, middle, high school, a variety of different programs. So we found that we were going to reduce that by half, and so we left 10,000 in that line, but took 10,000 out, and that we've been assured that VEMSA will coordinate with us to develop something for that price. Just won't be necessarily the same. BDCC is another. This is the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, which is they help do the programming here with Terry and Sarah and Kayla Anthony around senior survival and job. Reality fair and those types of events, and so that's a program that has been traditionally funded by the 4 high schools in Windham County to each contribute towards helping staff that position that does that work with us. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, but because we're sharing that cost, it's been less for us to gain from that. I've had some negotiations with them, some conversation with them, and we've decided to. They've asked for 25, but we're going to get back to them if this budget goes through and tell them we're going to give them only 20, and that we just can't afford to do the full amount anymore. The driver's ed car, as we own, but it's getting up there in years, so we have to do something with that. And originally we talked about a purchase, but felt that a lease was more responsible as far as the yearly increase, so we have a lease as an increase there. And then the second half of the MTSS budget, secondary assessment, is another $251,000 there. And there's some increases to the Voc Tech, which is the CTE tuition rates, right?
Yes. It's a 6-semester rolling average, and the state sets the amount and tells us how many students we're paying for, which has seen a jump. That's going up.
So again, some increases, some decreases. And so my conclusion at the bottom talks about how this is a reduction of just over 5 FTEs of professional staff and just over 2.0 of support staff. Does not include the 1.0 that we're adding, so it's really just a 1 FTE of support staff net. These choices were made by the group to minimize the impact on student-facing programming and where possible using attrition of staff. I do mention that the first version of the budget that was presented was nearly 10% increase. I think it was something 6, item number 4,
Yeah.
something like that. And then following the 4 meetings, and about $1 million in reductions, we are showing now a 3.6% increase, while student counts are at this point somewhat steady for now.
Yeah.
So that is sort of the overview of some of the major line item increases and decreases for your entertainment.
All right.
Oh, I didn't ask questions on the Leland Gray portion, sorry.
The 0.7 music reduction, will that completely eliminate 6th grade band, or will the 6th grade band be shared?
I'm gonna defer to Dana on what that will look like.
It should not eliminate the band.
Okay. Thanks.
The MTSS budget assessment increases are identical in elementary and Leland and Gray?
Because
You
the
just
student
split it?
count, the student count is roughly 50/50.
Okay,
so it's
I was just like, did you split it or did we carry a typo or, I mean,
No, it's,
to the
it's,
dollar?
so there was a little tweaking on my part because of the breakdown between A and B. And if you look at the numbers, I gave you the long-term weighted ADM calculator. It's a new calculator, so it's easier to see actual students and how they're weighted. The elementary level is a little bit more, and so it was coming out at 51%. But when I break down the calculations between A and B that I will end up reporting to the state with the budgets, the amount of reserve funds that had to be used was much higher than if it's more of a 50-50 breakdown. And Bob and I talked about this at length because
We even arm wrestled. She won.
Because when you do a straight calculation based on the tax calculators, it doesn't take into that separation. And so you could argue that we have 6th grade, K through 6 is 6 grades and 7 through 12 is 6 grades. And it's in the weighting of the census, they do count 6th grade as elementary, but the expenses are actually at a secondary level because they're at Leland and Gray. And so I did tweak it a little bit because you can argue that it's more of a 50-50 split, and it follows along better with our tax calculator. It was more advantageous, I'm gonna just say that. So that is how it was done. It's close though.
Thanks.
Told her she won. I don't know if you want to wait till the end of the presentation for questions.
Yep, board members first, discussion.
So then, I don't know, do you want
That's what I was gonna ask.
to go line by line, or was that overview sufficient? How do you want to
How do you wanna do it?
go next?
I'll ask if any of the budget committee folks want to have any comments about the process we went through, or anything that you want to add for the whole group? Nothing.
All right. I mean, I could say, sure, I could say a few words.
I'm sorry to jump, before he does, I didn't come back to the thing I said I was gonna come back to, which is the co-curricular transportation piece. Do you want me to just jump in there for a quick second? Yeah?
All right, go ahead.
So there's no change in that, in essence. We didn't make any changes to that. However, it was proposed that we consider, because we're struggling to get transportation for a lot of our athletic events, and of course, the contract that you guys authorized tonight may help that, we don't know. But that we were finding that it was suggested that if the district considered purchasing 1 or 2 of the small van, multi-use school vehicle, what's it called?
Multifunction school activity bus.
Yeah, that's that one. That if we got a couple of those, either purchased or leased, that we could utilize those for athletic trips, for intensive trips, for after school, for summer, for different kinds of things. We'd be able to expand what we can do as far as traveling and not be reliant on bus driver shortages. It's a complicated thing, and so we were trying to work out, is there a cost savings, does it cost more? What are the challenges, all the different factors involved? And so at this time, we didn't have a proposal that we felt adequately had enough data to support that it was a savings. Not that we think it's gonna cost more, we just don't think there's enough data yet to really analyze it. So we didn't do anything with that yet. We just left the line for transportation as it is. So I think we're gonna continue that exploration, but we didn't include a dollar amount because it wasn't really an increase or decrease. But we wanted you to know that we were pondering it, and if it came time to that analysis, that it felt that it was a move to do something, that we would bring that back to you guys as a full board, even if it was after the budget was passed, to talk about how to shift that line to something else. But we would it's not really part of the budget conversation per se. We're gonna keep that line in it for now, see what happens.
Good.
Does that help?
Thank you.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I mean, yet another case in point of just how rigorous this process has been from the administration, including arm wrestling apparently. So, yeah, I just want to thank the administration and the whole team that put this together. It has been a laborious process. We've had 4 meetings, is that correct? 4 meetings. And each time we put back any instructions, it came back with very clear information and adjustments. And just to be clear, this is not where any of us wants to be. Unfortunately, it is what has been placed in front of us. The excess spending threshold is it's the most egregious penalty I've ever seen. You'll never find a credit card that has that kind of a penalty. So in good faith to our taxpayers, to the students, to everybody, it just doesn't make sense to go over that excess spending threshold. So the administration and coupled with us came up with this in the best way possible, and I think in the least harmful and painful to the student experience. So that's not an easy task when you're talking about cutting nearly $1 million. So again, kudos, and really appreciate everything that you folks have done.
Lindsay, you're next.
I was wondering, as I look back at this, with the elimination of Jamaica pre-K, what does that put us for a cap for pre-K, and how big of an impact numbers wise is that gonna be?
Well, this year, I can speak to that we have, so the Townsend room, where it currently exists in Townsend, I believe is a cap of 24, right, Randy?
Yeah.
Based on size, right?
Right. The size
Now,
of the room.
with staffing, you have to have ratios as well.
Sure.
But we would be able to, right now, consolidate both of the 2 classrooms into that one space and still be under 24. It would involve.
Actually, we're very close.
Yeah, no, we're there.
26 students are in pre-K between 3 and 4 this year. I just talked to Samson as we were
In our buildings?
in our building. 15,
I'm not sure
there's
that's
15, right, Randy, at Townsend?
We have 14 at town.
Okay. And so, and then 11 or 12
There's
at
9 at JVS.
11, there's 11 as of Tuesday.
They added.
I went to a field trip and there was 11.
So I stand corrected, but we're right near or at that threshold. So the question is like, could we serve all the 3-4 needs in our district in one classroom? It's gonna be close, but
what we have right now, Andrew has been working with the town clerks to try to get a real idea of the kids that are out there, which town clerks can only tell us about birth records. We've been putting together other information we've collected over the years, and while Samson's been working on some things, and I do have some sort of drafts of the graphs he's been putting together, he did not have time to put the overall enrollment projections for birth to 5. I'm hoping to have it for the next meeting, but we did get Jamaica's, and I have been looking at the numbers for 3-year-olds, and it looks like the 3-year-old population currently going in will be 4-year-olds will be 13 for 27, and so according to what we're servicing right now, there would, if the board chose to have a 3-4 program, there would be room in Townsend to have a program. You as a board have some decisions to make around pre-K as to whether you want to do 3 and 4 year olds and how you want that to look after you make that decision in terms of if there is only one program, how would you determine what families first come first serve, 4 year olds? So, but we will have projections. It is interesting to look at, but it is, Jamaica's population is definitely going down, and of the families that are choosing to send their kids to public school, currently the 3 year olds are 13.
So I'm sorry, we would be at or close to the 24 cap with 3 and 4?
Currently, if you only had one program, we're servicing 25 or 26 students right now. The cap in Townsend is 24. When next year those 4 year olds go on to kindergarten, we will have 13 kids matriculating from our current programs into 4 year old program. So it would potentially leave room for 11 more kids, whether that was 4 year olds coming out of the woodwork or 3 year olds, depending on how the board moves forward. And answer the questions. I was gonna also talk a little bit about some of the factors that are determining the budget numbers. Would you like me to do that now?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's give them the whole picture.
So I can say that you are one of very few towns around here that long-term weighted ADM has gone up. You were at 840.55 last year, and my narrative, which I did before Friday, is 861.14. The very last number we certified was 861.21. So you've gotten just a little, not quite a tenth more, half a tenth. So that's been helpful this year. Bob, you're not helpful.
I'm sorry.
With this draft budget that I call draft 3 because of the numbers of drafts that we've gone through, the per pupil cost is ending up at $16,868. That is, and the tax calculator that I have attached to the budgets, the first one will show you, it's $215.46 over the penalty. And so I just want to reiterate that that penalty will end up going on the per pupil cost. So you would end up with a final per pupil cost at $17,057. That is what your tax rates would be based on. Right now, we have a yield that the state has estimated to be 8,849. This number is a number that doesn't get locked in until the legislature votes on it in May and June or June. So if this number, based on state factors of the education fund, if they're having a hard time after everybody passes their budgets to have enough funding to fund all of the budgets in the state of Vermont, this number could go down, which would actually impact negatively on all our taxes. So while we vote on the numbers we do know, it can change. So that would impact our per pupil costs and our taxes. Again, this budget is a 3.6% increase over your expenditure budget last year. With this first tax calculation, you can see that there's a range based on your current common level of appraisal in your town, your CLA. The state started last year with adjusting your CLAs. And so on that the first tax calculator sheet I enclosed in your packet, you will see the bottom section has what the actual CLAs before they're adjusted based on what the state just came out with. And so they take that number, this year they're adjusting it by 70.33% to try to, I guess, make them more in line with after it's confusing me, I apologize, but it's a formula they've put together to try to make it more equal across the state. And then you come out with the state adjusted tax rates. Those tax rates are what's used to determine your tax rate after the equalized tax rate in the above section. So knowing what the expenditures are in your budget, the offsetting revenues, this tax calculator shows the net spending at 14,500,000 and about 3,000. You have your long-term weighted ADM and you come out with your net spending. We do have a bond that is reducing our per pupil cost, so it gets it down a little bit, and that's what's the difference between that 16,686 and the 16,470 is what comes up with the $216 over the threshold. So your tax rate prior to the CLAs is 1.927. After you take the state adjusted CLAs, you will see a range, and of course Windham is only high school, so they're only 37% of your budget, but you will see a range of Brookline at 1.26 to Jamaica at 2.743. It shows you the tax increases per $100,000 house site, so on average, if your house is around 300,000, you can multiply that by 3 to get your potential increase for the year. This is again without using this particular sheet, without using any reserves to buy down to the threshold. And I really wanted to, it's our recommendation, my recommendation, and I think the board's hope to use some fund reserves. We are getting close to the recommended 5 to 8% reserve to hold to keep in your reserves in case of emergencies or whatnot based on your budgets. This tax calculator that doesn't include Jamaica is what I presented at the last budget committee meeting in hopes that we could then use approximately 186,000 to get down to the threshold. And that is your second tax calculator that I have put in your packet, showing that it does that 186,000, almost 187,000, gets rid of a threshold and brings you down to a spending, per pupil spending of 16,470. You're right at the threshold, and your tax rates would be less. You're still looking at potentially 12% in a couple towns of an increase in your taxes. The last tax calculator I put together is if Jamaica School was not closed and we still had the same expenses, you would need almost 450,000 of reserve funds to get down to the threshold. And you would be looking, if you didn't do that, you could be looking at 20% tax rate increase. That's all the wonderful news that I have to share.
Everybody follow that? Go ahead.
So, zero down 186 and 445. Can you explain the 186 again? I apologize.
The 186 is to the reserve fund amount. It was, so I will say, when we had our budget meeting, it was a little bit more than that we were talking about. When I went back through the pre-K section and trying to pull out JVS, I found one box where the formula wasn't pulling the correct amount, and it wasn't reducing those JVS expenses that I was trying to reduce. And so once I fixed that, it went down. So it was a mistake, but luckily it was a really positive mistake. It was an oversight of that one box of the formula. So originally last week I thought it was going to be 235,000, and it's actually 186,000, 887,000 that we would need to get to that amount.
So the 186 does not get us to the excess spending.
It does,
It does.
yes.
And the 445 gets,
That's if, that is going back
Oh.
to putting all of Jamaica back in,
got it.
okay.
All right, and I had asked Heidi to work up the sheet with Jamaica in because of a future budget line, because in order to close that, that's outside of this board's, purview. So I just wanted everybody to be able to see what that looks like. And again, we have a budget or a agenda item to discuss whether we want to request a vote or not coming up, but that's why that one exists separate. But as far as the budget committee's conversations, we were looking at responsible use of our fund balance. As Heidi said, we do have slightly more than the 5 to 8% that's recommended for us to have in our fund balance. But if we were to use the 186,000, that brings us back to roughly that 5 to 8%, which means that we would not have available fund balance to buy down the tax rate in the future. So I think that's a really important component to put out there. And the other thing, just because it's a concern of mine, is the SU budget. We bought down 900,000 in fund balance, which we are roughly responsible for 65% of.
Yes.
So, and the SU does not have the available fund balance to buy down their budget next year. So that cliff that,
We're here.
it's here. The cliff is in front of us. So this is, again, we saw pretty substantial increases coming for the SU budget. Even after 900,000 in fund balance, we're seeing what could be 20% tax increases if Jamaica does not close, even with using those fund balances. So.
And just a note about the SU budget, there were some reductions in staffing in that. It really is it was a 3.4% increase to MTSs, which is the big one. But really, it's the loss of federal funding that's really driving that percentage up so much. And it's hard. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. I mean, it's possible midterm elections could shift some of that. Maybe we get more than we anticipate later. We don't know. But we have to build it responsibly, assuming that we're not going to get any of that. And so that's why that $700,000 loss of revenue. Right? Yeah. But yes, Drew's right. The cliff is in front of us.
Any other questions?
I don't know if this is best at this particular budget spot, but I was reading an article the other day about the legislature talking about a different form of the threshold that is instead it's like a harder cap.
So there's a bill right now that's been introduced this first week of session that would have I don't know if the number was even released publicly, or they may haven't come up with a number yet, but some sort of a hard cap on percent increase of expenditures. And so I assume it would be something quite low, and you could go above that as a percent increase in your budget. That is a very controversial bill. Emily might be able to tell us more about that if she wishes, but that has been a bill that's been suggested by Phil Ruth. But that would not take effect for this budget cycle.
Right, okay.
The other thing I think is important to mention in public is the student count, the way that students are weighted and counted. As we said, this year we were fortunate in that not necessarily the number of students in our programs, but the way those students were counted increased. So we have roughly twice as many weighted students as we actually have living beings in our building. And over time, that is likely to also go down. So next year, as we're looking at this cliff in front of us, that 861 number is likely to also go down, making the impact that much
harder.
It is a 2-year rolling average, so it hopefully softens the blow a little bit as it goes down. And again, we'll have more of an enrollment projection next time, but I think you're gonna see, I think it's gonna be stable after talking for a year or so, but overall, it's going to go down.
And it's not a 1-for-1.
And that's happening all across the state of Vermont, let me just say that. I mean, that's all I'm hearing at my business managers meetings is the poverty level has changed, or there's some Medicaid changes, and there's less people qualifying, and that is a big weight. And numbers of students have decreased, I think, in the state of Vermont by like 60,000 or something like that. It's over the course of years.
Numerous years, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the one piece of data I gave the budget committee was the total number of real students, real bodies, right now in the district is about equal to what Leland and Gray was when I was a teacher here in the 90s. And that was with 6th grades, not 7. So like, that is the reality of, 25 years ago, or 25, 30 years ago, I should say. That was the, sorry, Lindsay, you're older than you think. That's the drop, and it's been steady, so. And honestly, and that's what Marlboro's facing, that decline in enrollment, increasing costs, and the inability for them to afford it is what's forcing them to have to talk about closure.
Any more budget questions? Do we want to go line by line through the budget?
No.
I know you don't. We've been line by line through the budget. Is there any particular lines of the budget that people that were not part of the budget committee want to have specific explanations on? Go ahead, Kate.
Excuse me. Thank you. And thanks, guys, for this hard work. I have 2 questions. One is kind of micro, and I guess it's a line item question, but because we had some particular input about the farm to school program at Newbrook, I just wanted to follow up on that and ask if the program can survive with this budget cut and what it means for the school and the community if it does not.
Yeah, so what I said earlier, and I'll let, Scott's right here, I'm like, where's Scotty? He's right here. I'll let him talk a little bit more about that, but it's obviously a program that has a huge impact in Newbrook, and not with a super high price tag, and all things considered, of a $15 million budget. But it's something that PTO could take on a fundraising campaign for, something along those lines as well. So what it could look like, what the impact will be for kids and families, is probably best left to Scotty to talk about.
Well, my discretionary money really comes from my enrichment funds and my work with our PTO. And our PTO, you should know, are really incredible fundraisers. But what we've been traditionally doing with our $10,000, which is now moving to $7,500 with this proposed budget, is that we've been splitting our circus with the PTO, and we've been paying for Camp Keewaydin for our 5th graders. The 5th grade parents are raising money for a party for the 5th graders as well, or some kind of trip. When I look at the impact for 92 and change, it's a pretty incredible impact. 2 of our 3 biggest events, and by biggest I mean most people in our multi-purpose room, are our farm to school events. Amy is here. Amy Duffy is our farm to school coordinator, and she does this incredible job with outreach and planning in order to make our harvest dinner happen. I didn't get a good count, but I can say that I don't think the fire marshal knew how many people were in our multi-purpose room. But we were packed, and it is just such a pleasant event because everybody's just rolling. We're eating soup together that's made in classrooms and in homes nearby and by staff. And our staff is there, and all the parents are there, and I would guess 90 to 95% of the people are represented, of the children are represented. Amy, do you think that's true? It was really packed. We're also raising money for farm to school. So we've got a raffle and we've got a silent auction, And we get donations from all over the community for that event, for those items. Amy also has a year-round schedule. I did bring, like, we've got a ladder of responsibility. So each of the classrooms, one does pollinators, one does seed starters, one does medicinal garden. Grade 3 does Vermont food traditions and food justice. Grade 4 does hydroponics and trout life cycle. We raise trout in the classroom and release them into Grassy Brook in Mr. Gregan's room. And then grade 5 is waste stewardship. So they're weighing the waste every day and trying to improve the school, but they're also using vermicomposting and learning about that. Amy's specific job, she visits every classroom once a week. And each of the kids, she's got a cycle over the course of the year where in the fall, we are, let me start in the spring. In the spring, we're planting and readying the gardens. We've got huge garden beds that we bought with money that we raised via grants and fundraising. In the summer, Amy waters and maintains the gardens with very few hours that we pay her. She manages that through the summer. And in the fall, we harvest and we use the food. And in the winter, and these are happening during the classroom meetings. In the wintertime, Amy is cooking with the kids. All throughout the year, she's also doing taste tests where kids are trying new things. What's this month, Amy?
Beets.
Beets. Don't tell the kids, I don't like beets.
Well, we're gonna make beet brownies, so.
Beet brownies are a trick. So every month we're doing different things. We're sending information home to families. When I think about like objective measures, I do have an objective measure for you. Every year we take the VIII, which is Vermont the statewide objective assessment at the end of the year. It's cumulative. And the numbers are pretty clear to me in science. We only take the science test in 5th grade, and you can account for like really high scores just solely due to farm to school, or you could account for it also because of the interests of some of our teachers. You know, we have some scientific oriented teachers. But I will say that in 2024, 85% of us, of our 4th graders were proficient, and the statewide average was 43%. So that's twice as high as the state average. And last year was 64 and 44, and the year before was 78 and 45. So we're consistently almost doubled what the state average is in terms of our science scores. And you know, that really tells me that we're doing something right, and I really do believe that a lot of that is coming from this. So I would say our farm to school program has 2 major impacts. I think I've talked long enough. One is it draws parents into their children's day and into their children's education and really lets them get to know one another in a way that is really beautiful. It's one of my very favorite things to do is to go to our circus is not farm to school, but our circus is a big night and harvest dinner is a big night. To be in attendance at an event where you can barely fit in the room to celebrate the children and their success is amazing. And then the other thing is I think that our science scores show that we're doing something really right that other people aren't doing. And when I look around the region or the state, I think, wow, it's got to be Amy's work and our stress on science and how things work. So I you can tell I believe in this work. So I do trust you folks to make good decisions, and I know that we don't have enough money for everything. I mean, we just don't, and I get that. So I get the reality of it. Now, if this money did get cut, my $7,500 of enrichment, I would have to sit down with my staff, I'd have to sit down with my leadership team, I'd have to sit down with my PTO and make some decisions about how that money's gonna get spent. And you know, maybe there are things that we wouldn't do, and maybe we would try to do farm to school, but we would have to cut some of the other enrichment ideas. And that would be for us to decide. Is that good?
That's great.
Sorry I talked so long.
Kate, you got another question?
I just wanted to respond for a sec. I appreciate that, Scotty. And I wonder, as we just tell the schools they can fundraise for that, I hope we can be realistic about whether that's possible and how we can support them in doing that. I don't, we're too late for the budget cycles for the towns now, but I don't know if the schools or some folks should consider taking some of these items that are easy to describe and quantify to the town's separate budgets. I hate to see us keep cutting this. I know this is one small thing in a bigger budget, but it is something that we heard specifically about and that we know is something that's pretty essential. So maybe that we can continue that, but I think it's important that if we're gonna cut the funding, that we find other ways to help make sure they still happen. And I guess that's one specific item, but then I had one bigger question, if I may, just quickly, which is looking at this cutting, and you all, it's no criticism. I'm grateful to the budget committee for doing the hard work for us, but as we do this year after year, like what's a longer term picture? You know, we're talking about how next year's going to be worse, and I just I don't know if we have to be thinking about this budget with that in mind in terms of what we preserve and how far we can, you know, sort of move towards as, you know, as a paradox approach to school budgeting, by which I mean like forever making it smaller. And I know that's not a specific question, but I wonder if these budget cuts anticipate further narrowing and if they make sense with that lens.
I mean, we're in dangerous times, and I think I think what you're thinking, Kate, if I'm rephrasing a little bit, is like, are we at a place where there's nothing left to reduce, and then what are we left with educationally? What are we actually offering our kids, and what does that look like? And I think that's where we are. And this board has spent years trying to study other ways, using the buildings and other sites, and trying to figure out how to save money with different types of consolidation models and things, and it came up with no real great answers because we're in this weird number game where we are too big to combine classes and too small to be sustainable in some ways, and it's just a tough place to be in. We don't have the economy of scale that some other bigger places might have, and yet we have some really vibrant schools with some really cool things going on. And if we don't have those things going on and we lose families to the area, what does that look like? What does that mean for our communities? So that's where we're at. And I think it's the exact same problem that Emily's hearing about in the State House as people are wrestling with what to do next with Act 73. And I don't know that we have any answers. I feel like this board has worked hard at this because it's not a surprise to any of us that we're here. It's maybe a surprise to us that it came this quick and that we haven't found a solution yet. That might be a surprise, but it's not for lack of trying. So yeah, I think I don't have the answer, but I think you're right. We're at a dangerous point right now.
Emily promised she was going to fix it all in Montpelier.
I'm not gonna. You can call on me if you want, but I could share all sorts of stories. We're in the middle of it deep, and we've only been there 4 days.
I had expected she'd have it fixed in 2 days, but
Yeah.
Can I ask one more small question? I know we've got a lot, just of Emily. Are there towns, other juristic towns that we can learn from? Is anybody figuring out how to make this work? I mean, yes, you would have told us if there were, but just in case.
I mean, I can respond to that. Every town is different, and every town is dealing with the same. Not every town. Most towns are dealing with the same issues. Where the challenges are the biggest are in our rural parts of the state. There's no, as Bob said, economy of scale, and we're not alone in this. We're not alone in the numbers. We're not alone in the challenges. Everybody's at whatever place they are in their own budgets. Bob, maybe you could give some feedback on folks that you're talking to. I'm at a higher level than that. You know, I'll just say the reason Act 73 passed, even with the great amount of division that there was because this was coming, and it's been coming for years. And I'm not going to minimize the challenges that have been created in the lead up to this, but the cost of education and the decline in our enrollment have created a crisis, and it's not going to easily go away. So the governor has been very clear, and the Secretary of Education have been very clear that they believe consolidation of our districts is the answer. And I will just say I voted against the bill because I am not convinced that is the answer. I need evidence that we can reduce our costs per pupil if we consolidate. And that has not been at all clear. The data doesn't, in fact, doesn't show that. So that's my goal to unpack the cost drivers in our state and in our districts, and use data to make informed decisions about next steps. But the important thing to remember is that if we continue to move forward with Act 73, there's a foundation formula in place that will become effective by 2029, and each of us in our school districts, regardless of what they look like, and remember, the governor has said he doesn't believe that we should be moving forward with the foundation formula until we consolidate our school districts, reduce the 119 school districts we have today down to a smaller number. He proposed 5. He agrees now that that's probably not going to work. But, there's been some proposals. I know everybody says that there were no maps. There were maps that came out of the redistricting task force. They rejected them for various reasons. But some of them had like 14, like county size, essentially, whatever. If we move forward with the foundation formula, this conversation will be very different. We will be given a certain amount of dollars, and we're going to have to educate our kids within those dollars. So there's a base amount, and then that we will be given per pupil, and then there are weights that we will add to that will increase depending on the students that we are serving. And that's a different story than what we're dealing with right here, right now. Now we locally are having this conversation, and I can't see the room full of people, but I'm assuming there's people in the room who are concerned about the direction we're going. But it's a different conversation in the foundation formula. Just I want everybody to really understand that. So a lot is going to unpack in both the Education Committee and the Legislature and the Ways and Means Committee and the Finance Committee in the Senate over the next few weeks. But the pressure is great from both sides. Reduce our number of school districts and cap spending, or rethink the process. I'm going to say one last thing, and then I'll be quiet. You folks can ask questions if you want. My hope is that either one is going to take time. Either path we take, whatever path we take, is going to take time. We are not going to implement change this big immediately. It's going to take a few years. So we've got to grapple with reducing our spending as best we can right now because of all the things that we've talked about tonight. But I'm hoping we can try to preserve our saving the elementary schools, the rural small schools that we can over the next few years, and start looking at regionalizing our middle and high schools and make them comprehensive high schools, including CTE in every one of them, and making sure that we don't have public school deserts, which is a term that came up during the redistricting task force. Areas that just don't have a public school to serve the kids in a reasonable transportation time. So it's super challenging. But again, because of the challenge, I really believe we need to identify the cost drivers, because in Vermont, we pay a great deal more toward social services in our education budgets as opposed to our human services budgets than they do in other states. So we need to unpack that. This is all important. We need to serve our children. Doesn't matter which budget they come from. they need to be served. But I want to understand the cost drivers, and I want to use the data that has been shared with us and given to us from the Agency of Education through the redistricting task force. I keep saying this every time I'm at one of these meetings. Go read Appendix E. You'll see the data in that redistricting task force. The 30-page report, 40-page report is great, but the Appendix E, which is like 180 pages, that's where you're going to see the data. And we need to unpack that. So there you go.
Thank you, Emily.
Sorry, Drew.
Thank you. All right. Are there any more questions from board members? If not, I'm going to open it up to public. I'm going to ask you to keep your comments to a minute since we're running late. We have a lot of agenda still to go. I know Catherine's been waiting patiently with your hand up, so go ahead and start.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. We've talked about unprecedented events in not so many words, dangerous times, a precipice, a cliff. We've talked about these types of things. And we do live in unprecedented times. We live in an unprecedented time of inflation. We live in an unprecedented time of grocery prices, a 30% increase to that tune. But a typical salary increase is about 3%, and that is supposed to take into consideration inflation and cost of living, but yet many Americans are not getting a 3% increase. So when I see a 5.5% increase for the fiscal year of 27, in addition to the 5.5% increase is to the tune of $250,000. And the additional admin increase is $46,813. That's $275 right there. What are we doing? What is that increase? Many Americans suffer. I will tell you, my household's not getting a 3% increase this year, year over year. I can tell you many, many Americans are going into the grocery store, a 30% increase without that 3% increase in their salaries. So I am curious, when our children are sitting here suffering this wonderful, the loss of the wonderful program that Mr. Tabachnik talked about, farm to table, my kids have great palates. They eat Kalamata olives, and that's their preference. When they come home and they are eating stir fry with peppers and mushrooms and onions at the age of 9 and 4, I mean, this is something that we can't restrict. These are wonderful programs that make this community rich. They make the people you see before you, Lindsay Ellinger, Drew Hazelton, they took part in these amazing, not farm to table, but we took part in these schools. And so who are we going to turn out when we strip the enrichment programs from these schools? Moreover, my increase in insurance is stymieing. I won't tell you what my premium is. I won't tell you what my cardiology appointments are, okay? But a $100,000 increase, which reflects a disgusting and inordinate 8% increase, which we're all experiencing as Americans because insurance is going up. But we as taxpayers, and more importantly as parents, are assuming these just stifling increases, and yet you as employees are not. I'm just perplexed. As a parent, as a taxpayer, and as a person. So I would like to stress that we reopen this budget because it may be approved, but there are questions that remain.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you just state your name? I forgot that. So,
Catherine Jameson.
Thank you. Would you state your name before you speak?
Rob Hoffman. I'm a Newbrook parent, and the Farm to School program, I would say, is an excellent program. If there's anything that we can save out of this is the best value in education, I would say, by far, for the cost of what it is and what we get out of this program. It's immense. My children talk about it all year long. It's a huge thing. We moved 2 years ago from north of Boston. From an expensive innovation school, which didn't have half the stuff I feel like this Newbrook school has, with the limited budget that it is. And to see, I understand, the budget constraints, but if there's, certain things like farm to school, and this is Vermont. I mean, if you're not going to have farm to school in Vermont, where you're going to have it. I mean, this is literally like what makes this state is farm. So I think that, programs like that, we really, whatever we have to do to keep, something like that, I think is really important.
Thank you. Great.
My name's Grant Johnson, and I'm a parent of a student at Newbrook also. And I also wanted to voice my support for the Farm to School program and the enrichment budget. I think that it's a huge loss to reduce both of those areas of the budget for the same reasons that have been discussed. I think it's so invaluable to have reasons to get together in the all-purpose room and see the other parents, see the other families, see all the kids together, eat the food that they grew in the garden. The impact, the value is priceless. You can't put a number on it, but it's so much more than what it costs. I think that, I would ask that we reopen the supervisory union budget and look at some of these other items for the general fund. Maybe looking at the funds for capital projects. If we're okay with reducing that by 200,000, but we can't find 9,000 for farm to school or 5,000 to keep the enrichment budget where it is. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people have, students went through school. It's kind of hard to sometimes get them to tell you about what happened at school if it's all math and reading. But it's not hard to get my daughter to talk about what happened at farm to school or circus. And like,
second that.
Yeah, if we're not going to keep school at the center of community, then where's our community?
Thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment before we move on away from the budget discussion?
I have one question about a specific item, if I can just jump in. About the E-rate program, I'm not super familiar with this. From what I understood is that we put in $20,000, we get grant monies of $80,000 to increase internet speeds across the district.
It's a federal program, and we qualify based on the number of students and different criteria. We get it every year at the supervisory union level, and it's based on specific schools. There is a current, the current connections we have for the internet come into Leland and Gray and then get distributed to the schools through Leland and Gray. We're at speeds that were from 10 years ago. And so one of the expenses at the supervisory union's budget is we added 20,000 into the tech budget because for the E-rate funds, we have to locally pay 20% of what we're gonna get for any big category 2 projects. And so this project to increase the speeds that will probably take us into the next decade is about $100,000 project. So we've put 20,000 as a one-time cost into this coming year's budget so that we can get more access and faster internet, because currently I think we can say it bogs down when you've got kids testing or you've got a lot of staff using it. And so this was our IT department's request to finally make that leap into the next decade.
Set us up for the future.
Yeah, for the future, yes.
I mean, I don't mean to discount internet speed. I think it's important also, but I just question what would happen if we didn't put that 20,000 in this year, if we were to use it for these enrichment programs instead? Because that's one area of the budget where I could see potential reduction without having to cut staff positions.
And so the 20,000 is divided between all the schools, right? So it's not a direct 20,000 to this budget, just to make sure that's clear.
All right, any further board discussion right now? So,
Drew.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi.
You mean escape? Go ahead.
No, sorry, that was late to the game, but, okay, hi everyone, I'm Amy Duffy, I'm the farm school coordinator over at Newbrook, as we just said. A couple of points I just would like to add that's really important with the program. We have to think about students that don't necessarily thrive in the classroom. who aren't necessarily at their best when they are sitting in a seat and then they're sitting and they're learning in that environment. That's not necessarily where a lot of students are feeling their best. Maybe they're not confident. When they're able to do things like go with art and music and Farm to School and any of these enrichment programs, there are certain students who really benefit in another way. And we see that. I mean, I think of a student a couple of years ago. He was a child that came in through the foster care system. He was only with us a very, very short time. He was in the TLC room. You know, he just was a unique situation. He would come out into the garden and we would talk bugs. We would talk bugs all day, and it was great. He would focus. He would sit there, he would focus, and we would weed. To the point where he weeded out all of my amaranth out of the school garden, which I don't know if you have ever passed by. They're the beautiful amaranth plants with the fronds, and it was just great, but he was focused, and he was calm, and he was feeling good. And all of that is a really different type of measure that we need to think about when we're thinking about these programs. Another point I would like to make too is this new curriculum that everyone has adapted, the EL curriculum. It lends itself so beautifully with any Farm to School activities. We're all building on this now. Each grade has an activity that could easily fall into lines of Farm to School practices. And this is just a great way to really round out the program, but round out our children's learning experiences too. They can't just be bogged down with academics all day. That's really just not where, especially in elementary school, where they're going to thrive. So I think we need to really think about how these enrichment programs are important for the students who are not thriving in the classroom, who maybe need another experience to gain confidence, who are more tactile, who have these types of experiences or differences in learning that really need to be highlighted and understood in our public schools. So needless to say, I think the program is amazing. I love the program. I feel like it was meant for me with my nutrition degree and with my love of school and gardening, all of it, especially here in our little town where I actually get to work with kids that, you know, I see at the river bend and they want hugs, and that's lovely. But just to think outside the box as far as these enrichment programs are hitting other levels with students that we are not necessarily hitting in the classroom.
Thank you. All right, so where does the board want to go from here with the budget? We've had.
Excuse me, Drew. I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there a possibility that we can comment on the 5.5% salary increase that I asked about?
Sure, I mean, I can speak to that. It's contracted. We're talking about certified staff. It was a negotiated contract. The support staff are currently in negotiations, and it's just an estimate of what they might get, but this is union organized, yeah. So we have no control.
So even if the budget were to be reopened, it's an established 5.5% increase contractually?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Certified staff, yes.
You know, as our enrollment goes down, we're not going to need as many people.
That's kind of what we're doing.
That's it. Kind of the conversation for tonight is reduction in.
And the health insurance is negotiated statewide. So
Statewide,
again,
yes,
there's
thank
nothing, you have absolutely no control over that either.
Right.
And just to remind you, the budget does show a reduction of 5 professional staff and net 1 support staff. So there are reductions built into this budget staffing.
All right, so we have to transition because we have other things on our agenda. I know that we received some correspondence. We'll talk about the correspondence. You guys, we sent out the correspondence. People had some comments about the budget. So pick an opportunity to read through those as you're thinking about the budget between now and our next meeting. We weren't really sure how to put this Jamaica discussion into the budget. It's a really important part of whether we can reduce our spending to get to the threshold or not. So there was a tax calculator sheet that was specific to what if we did all of the other things but didn't do anything with Jamaica. So I know it's almost 9 o'clock. It is 9 o'clock. But this is a really important discussion about what do we want to do with Jamaica. We do not have great direction from the community. They've discussed it a little bit at Jamaica Select Board meetings, but we don't have a request from the town at this point to have another vote or anything to that sort. But if we are going to move forward with closing that school, then we must warn a vote in order to move that forward. The reality is we will, even if we were to warn that vote today, we will not know the outcome of that vote before we have to finalize our budget. So that's where we're at. Did I do a decent job explaining that vote? So should we decide to push this vote forward, then the board is going to have to decide whether we put forward a budget with it or without it, not knowing whether the town is going to vote in favor of closing that building or not. So how do you want to proceed with the next thing on our agenda, which is the language around Jamaica?
So just to clarify, for tonight, we are talking about the language and if we want the vote, if we want to ask for the vote to happen.
Right, so if the board wanted to pursue closing the school, as it was presented in the budget discussion, we would have to petition the town to have a vote, and that language is here. Needless to say, that vote would not happen, and then there's a ability to reconsider that vote. It's a timeline. Somebody in the room probably knows how long it takes, but it'll be probably
30 days, 40 days.
Yeah, it's like, we wouldn't have a final answer until probably middle of May, right?
Yeah.
Whether it was.
Yeah, I think I think you're very dangerously close right now to even getting it on a town meeting ballot. So for the town. So probably, unless you're doing something tonight, it's probably gonna be even after that. So yeah, then you're 30 days out from that. So yeah, you're talking May probably.
So we're gonna have to put a budget together without knowing the answer as to what the town vote is. Should we ask the vote? Yeah.
I suggest we put a budget with it included.
Including keeping it open or including
Keeping it open. That way, if you do close it, it's money kept.
So if we
The
do
worst
that-
case scenario, go with the
Money that
worst.
you paid a tax on.
And penalty on.
Yeah.
100% of that would be penalized too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you still gave, we say you keep 400 in there, you threw away 200.
Yeah, but you're not guaranteed. They're talking about losing farm to school, Jamaica's losing school. So you don't know the feelings of the Jamaica residents.
No, I'm just
So-
talking about the money.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we have to come up with a budget. It's better to go with the worst case scenario and then,
That would be a 20% tax increase.
yeah, worst case scenario.
Well, wait, so
I was gonna say the other middle ground-ish, which is complicated, is to figure out a different direct educational service that could be provided there
Yeah.
and not have it be pre-K. I don't know what that is off the top of my head right this minute, but if you were still offering some direct educational service at the building and meeting the requirements of the Articles of Agreement, and still potentially eliminating some costs, you obviously wouldn't reduce all of those costs, but you might be able to reduce some staffing at the pre-K level if you're going to the one room and then doing something else there. Might have a cost to it, but, you know what I'm saying? So that's sort of like maybe there's a middle ground there. I don't know what it would be, but
I also think you have to think about other towns passing your budget too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of complicated pieces to that. This tax calculation with JVS back in doesn't include any fund reserves, so you could choose a certain amount, maybe not the 445,000, but the board could choose to use reserves up to a certain amount, and I can put that together.
if they did the same amount they were gonna use in the initial budget,
187,000.
sure. then see what that looks like, what those tax rates look like to compare, could be an interesting exercise.
Maybe about page
Lori,
one.
Lori, I hate to do
What's
this
that?
to you, but I shuffled my papers. I'm
Okay.
sorry, gosh.
The way
Gosh. Oh, it's late, you guys. Everyone in my house is sick. Bear with me.
So the way to tell the difference between these budget calculators is there's a number. You see how the top has some yellow highlights, but then off to the right, there's a number? It's either 445,
Yep.
445,
Yep.
or 0 or 186,000.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. The 186,000 is the budget that I presented without GABS.
Yeah.
Without any reserve funds. The 0 is that same budget, but with using those reserve funds. The 445 is how much reserve funds have to be used if we add Jamaica back in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you looking for a motion to move this along?
I'm looking for the will of the board. We just want to lay out the
So
situation.
we did this once and we
Yeah,
did
you
not
got
get the
it.
vote to close. And we've specifically said to Jamaica, more than once, I think, that until you ask us to do this, we're not gonna do it again.
Yeah.
I don't see, I mean, other than angering the citizens of Jamaica by once again asking them to do something they've told us they don't want to do, I don't see the point. I mean, the vote costs money, it takes time, and the outcome is probably gonna be the same. I don't think, until they come to us and say, hey, look, we've made a decision as a town, please put this to the vote again. Why?
What has happened in the middle, there's been, conversation has been towards the building with the select board, there's been conversations, I don't know if Dan and Drew are both involved or just Drew, but there's been conversations. But there hasn't, you're right, there has not been a formal request from the select board.
Right, we've talked about those conversations back and forth, and it's like, look, you need to come to us and say you're ready to do this again. You know,
And that didn't come out of your conversation with the clerk, no.
No, they were looking for some sort of guarantee that pre-K programs wouldn't be affected at some point in the future, but they're very different. So the board may have to make decisions, for example, that we're only gonna run 4-year-old preschool, not 3-year-old. So, you know, the programming discussion and whether the JVS days open are very different. And we're looking to see if they can somehow connect the two of those together in a vote. Crystal?
I mean, I agree with Joe. I think they haven't come and asked us. But I think we have to make some changes. Like, I don't know if it's fiscally responsible to keep pre-K there and Townsend if we can do it all in one room. So we would need to make decisions like, what are we gonna do educationally up there?
can we at least look at that? I mean, we're not gonna pass a budget tonight, so we can look at that. You know, we'll be up against it on a deadline, but, you know, maybe you'll come up with something.
Yeah, I mean, the administration can meet and discuss possible ideas and maybe come to you guys with some concepts. It's worth putting some brains together, I guess.
Emily with a hand.
Emily, thank you.
I hesitate to even mention this, but I'm gonna. Bob, have you reached out to the AOE to discuss what might happen if we aren't meeting the Articles of Agreement? Or have you talked to an attorney if we're not meeting the Articles of Agreement? Say we don't have a pre-K program there and you haven't come up with some other, you know, because I agree with Crystal, it makes no sense to hold a pre-K program in Jamaica if they will all fit in Townsend. I mean, you know, we have a responsibility to be fiscally responsible. So I'm just wondering whether we need some advice. And let me just clarify, I'm saying this because I don't think we're alone in this conversation. I think this has been happening a little bit. There's been some peripheral discussions about Articles of Agreement and whether that needs to be changed statutorily.
I can do whatever the board wishes me to do as far as reaching out, so. But I have not as of yet done that.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. Thanks.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
So, I don't know, the only thing I guess I really have to add at this moment is that I've been approached so many times in the last 2 weeks probably that please, please, please do not let my taxes go up that much. We will have to move, there's nothing we can do, there's no possible way I can pay that. I've had multiple people say this to me, like, I will have to sell my house, like I don't know how to do this. That's what I've been told. I can't fathom saying like, oh, we're gonna keep a pre-K program open in Jamaica, but sorry, you gotta sell your house over it. Like, that just blows my mind. It's not fiscally responsible at all. And I understand that we have articles of agreement and I don't want to go do any crazy stuff. I just need everybody to understand that we are one district and we are in terrible times. And we can choose to all like stand our ground and hold on to the thing that we think is the end all be all and all end up with nothing. Or we can figure out how to move forward some way or another. We keep talking about we're on this cliff here and we literally are on a cliff here. Like, it's not like we're just gonna work it out. Like it doesn't just appear. I don't know how we keep it open. I think that we need to figure out how not to do that. I think we need to figure out how to save as much money as we can save. And if we could have been in one campus right now, I think that may have been slightly more fiscally responsible of us all.
Yeah.
But that didn't seem to work out. So here we are.
Might have to dust it.
Drew enjoyed that.
Good.
So
I see you, Kate.
if we went with the, I won't get the exact number right, the 186,000 version of the spend down. And this doesn't come to fruition, we don't execute everything that we have laid out, what happens?
I'm not exactly following, can you,
If we said, we wanna go with the.
with the budget that we present,
Yep,
that we
this is how
brought
much
here
we're-
today? Yep,
Yep,
yep.
using
with-
of the fund balance,
Okay,
and then,
and it's voted, it's passed, is that what you're saying? We have an expenditure budget that we have to stick with. That I can say, you know, we're not allowed to overspend unless we deficit spend because of unanticipated expenses, so, I mean.
The
right?
bottom line is, the bottom line is the bottom line. So
Right.
if you, if that was the adopted and voted on approved budget, and the JVS is still standing and we're still running a program there, then we're not doing something else.
Right, something else.
I don't know what that something else is.
are we not deficit spending this year?
We are deficit spending this year, yes, we are.
Okay, are we getting penalized for that?
We are not.
Okay, would we get penalized? I think you probably get what I'm driving at, right?
Yes,
Okay.
you are, what you're saying is, we could bring a budget to the voters, knowing that it doesn't include JVS, they vote on it. If Jamaica doesn't close the school and we run a program there, we aren't gonna be paying a penalty on it, so if you're including the cost ahead of time, you're gonna be paying a double tax. So I know what you're saying. I don't know, and I need to look into this more because I don't have the experience. If the state sees us deficit spending, or the auditors see us deficit spending for years, year over year over year, if there's some concern, I mean, I report to the AOE and I do report if we have deficit spending every year. So I don't know, and maybe Emily has experience enough to know if there's something that comes back to haunt us, but I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, I mean, it would be our intention to do that, but if it did not come
Right,
to
I see.
pass.
You are not hurting yourself at this point in time if you choose to bring a budget that doesn't include JVS, but then we end up deficit spending and paying for something at JVS. It does mean, though, that we have to catch up on that deficit. So if we are 300,000 deficit,
Well, we're going over the cliff.
so if you pass it and we run a program and we overspend the budget by 300,000, going into budgeting for fiscal year 28, we have to add that into our budget.
Understood. I'm just trying to drive at what would be more fiscally responsible
Right.
for us to do.
Right, you're just looking at bigger cuts the following year, potentially.
Kate.
Thanks for calling on me again. Sorry if I misunderstood this, but would it maybe make sense for us, despite having said we're not going to go back to Jamaica as the situation keeps on getting more dire, like for, sorry to put, our chair or super to have that discussion again with folks in Jamaica as the long-term prospects and even the medium and short-term prospects for JVS are different than they were 2 years ago, I think, at least in our conversations, budget, population. I just waiting for that. I wonder if there's a more proactive approach that would make sense given that the situation is that much more dire now. And it's not going to go back, whether anybody wants it to or not. We're not going to return to a full campus there or a meaningful enrollment anytime soon. I don't see that happening anyway.
So what you're suggesting then is, rather than waiting for them, is to really be on the front end of proposing to them, ask us to do the vote, and we can settle whatever other issues they might have first, and then say, now that those issues you have our answers on X, Y, and Z, do you want us to have the vote or not, and really try to push it to the forefront is what you're suggesting.
I just wonder, maybe it's not like the first conversation isn't like have the vote now, but if and maybe you all have been doing this, but maybe it's time for some more proactive conversations about what this looks like rather than just waiting for them to come back. I don't know how engaged that conversation is. I'm not on the ground in Jamaica, but we're really hamstrung by this. And I don't know that there's a great benefit to the folks up there pushing this conversation back, but there may be enough else going on that it's not their, top priority right now. I don't know. I'm not in Jamaica, and my heart goes out to everyone there. But in terms of what we're doing, I pose that as a question. You all know better than I do, but if we can be a little more proactive in getting some answers.
How about I suggest that I'll volunteer Dana. And that we set up a public meeting in Jamaica between now and our next meeting in conjunction with the select board, and have a open dialogue, straw poll with the community and see where they're at, so that we can have a better feeling for our February meeting. Dana will
Just to
host
give
that
you an
meeting.
idea, it's on the select board's agenda again tonight.
So maybe they'll decide something.
Maybe, but I don't think the select board's talking to the community. So, whether this is going on or not. That's why I think we might get a nil vote, because it's not really out there. It's not in a conversation with people. Nobody's ringing the phone off my hook saying, you're closing it? So just to keep it in mind.
Which speaks to the earlier point that the decision was already made. They cast their votes already.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why it's not, right?
Yeah.
So you're proposing a joint meeting between the two boards.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily even a whole board.
A subcommittee of.
Subcommittee to meet in Jamaica over the next 3 or 4
Prior to the
weeks.
February meeting.
So that we have
We got
Lindsay,
some.
go ahead.
I was curious if we agreed on language as a board and we say, could you add this to your town meeting vote? And then so that it can happen in time. And then if you went there and you came back like, there is absolutely no way we should do this, it's a terrible idea, then we don't have to, then like, is there no harm, no foul? Like what's the worst case scenario of that happening? And at least then it's on the ballot if today is the day to get it on the ballot, then what's the problem with that?
So I'm gonna defer to maybe some of the more veteran board members. Could you have a motion that is contingent upon another action that if this action takes place, that this language becomes adopted. That if that action doesn't take place, this language would not be adopted. It's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, or even just if we said, hey, we want you to put it on your ballot, they put it on their ballot, and then in that meantime, we decided, or whatever, Jamaica was like, we absolutely hate this, then like we know where it's going, I guess, but what is that costing us? What's the
I think the cost is
downside?
what was described earlier, is that the idea that you're poking the bear on people that have already made a decision, and we're-
Yeah.
without them asking for us to have the decision, whether it's the whole community or even just the select board, somebody ought to be asking before we push it down their throat again. I think that's the downside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's the
it'd be
political
better
side.
to come from me and Drew than.
Sure, we'll have you guys lead that discussion, so.
Though I will say in the meeting that I had with the select board members when we toured the school, was multiple of those members of both the town and a couple of select board members were like, this place isn't in nearly as bad a shape as we were led to believe that it was. So I think that there was some,
Positivity.
forces, and there were maybe some forces in town that were trying to skew a vote, and point it a certain direction, right? I think that there was a contingency of folks that were really trying to use that as leverage to try to get Jamaica out, right? And I mean,
Well, all right.
so I don't know, but just.
Do we have a direction? Does somebody want to point us in a direction here? Lindsay wants to point us in a direction.
Well, I guess I want one more question is, if we don't warn it, or we don't approve words now, and it doesn't go on the ballot, then and you have a meeting and decide you would like to move forward and we do it later, but it's too late to get it on the ballot, do we just budget accordingly?
You have to make a decision about what you want to put on your own warning.
Okay. Gosh.
Gets complicated.
I'm sorry, I have to ask one more clarifying question that I think has already been answered and I just didn't understand it. If we were to vote make this vote happen right here, right now, it then goes on the ballot?
So yeah, what you would be
Or
doing is you'd be voting to authorize language requesting that the town hold a vote, is what you'd be doing.
Right.
And that has to happen, the vote would have to happen within a certain number of days from doing this.
Right, okay. So we are the direct, there's no I was confused on if there was some sort of middleman between us, by doing this vote, the vote would happen. If we said we wanted the vote to happen, it would happen.
That is correct. The town,
thank you.
The town has
That's
to
all.
hold the vote if the district requests a vote.
Very good, thank you.
All right, so I'm getting a sense we're not ready to vote the language tonight. It seems to be the consensus around that I'm getting. Is that what everybody else is feeling? Where are we going from there? Are we waiting for the town? Or are we reaching out to the town? What do we want to do as far as next steps? Because if we're not going to do anything with this language, then part of our budget direction back to the administration is to remove those cost savings from our budget projections, because we're going to have to fund that building and those programs. So
Unless you direct us to look for another alternative for direct instruction to happen there.
Or some other creative.
Direct educational service, whatever the word is.
Be creative. So, and that's why this is all kind of tied together.
I like your idea of reaching out, you and Dana, go talk to them, see what they think. Tell them, it came up as a budgetary discussion. We either have to budget or not budget. We don't know what to do. You've been talking, we've been talking, the select board's been talking, it's on the agenda. Where are we going? If they say we don't know, okay, we can do what we're gonna do. We get these guys to take a look and see if they can find something that's maybe less expensive than an entire pre-K program. And maybe there's a brilliant out of the box thing we haven't found yet. But we have to look at all our options. But I still don't think if we move forward and say, hey, you should close, I think the answer would be, for me, we already told you no. How do we tell you again?
All right. You guys got it. Anybody have a different plan they want to move forward with? All right, sounds like we have direction. Anything else on this topic before we move on? I know we're running way over.
Do you want me exploring the legal and AOE stuff simultaneously?
Please.
Everybody's
Yes.
covered. Oh, yeah.
It almost sounds like you want potentially 2 budgets next time.
Sorry.
Well, I just, so a budget that has the full expenses of JVS in it, and then potentially a creative solution, maybe, if there is one? Is that what I'm hearing?
We'll figure it out.
I don't think they would reject creative solutions.
No, if we don't have a creative solution, yes.
I was just gonna say, you've already done that. You've already given us those 3 scenario budgets, right?
Right, I have.
So if you have come up with creative solutions, and you want to do another one, great. Otherwise, we can work from there.
Okay.
Clear as mud?
Got a plan.
All right.
Do you?
Oh, we do.
What the plan is?
We'll talk to them.
High school choice, Dana.
No.
Okay, that was a fast transition. I do wanna, actually, before I forget, Tammy Clausen sent in passes for the school board members for games this season that they're gonna pass around. But thank you, it was thoughtful of her, and I want you guys to be able to enjoy these, but take one and keep passing.
Game tonight, probably.
Good question. Sorry, Bob, you may have to help me with this, it's getting late, but, so every year, the school board has to, take action around high school choice, and there are 2 parts of it. The first part is to, set a limit for the students that may choose to transfer out. It is, I think, the past practice and my recommendation that we do not set a limit. I believe we are usually around 3 to 5 students a year that do transfer out. The board does need to set and define a capacity to accept students. Interestingly enough, there were also 3 to 5 students coming in, roughly, but in the past, the board has, I believe, set the capacity at 20, and that would make sense to do also. So do not set a limit for the students that may transfer out, but do set a capacity for accepting 20 additional students transferring in. Does that make sense?
And that's consistent with what you guys have been doing since, at least since I've been back around. I don't know what we did before.
Do we have questions?
I'll make the motion. No limit for out, a limit of 20 for in.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Your motion is second. Any further discussion? Yes, go ahead, David.
Bring it up, but if next year we start cutting programs, are we gonna start losing students?
So the challenge is that you can't set the number lower than 5%, so if you're saying it's 5%, I think it's 5% of the high school itself, which is a pretty big number.
Okay.
And so you couldn't go below that, you couldn't cap it at, we're only gonna let 2 kids go.
Yeah.
So like, it ends up being not really a point to it. I'm not exactly sure why it was written that way, but I guess if schools were really suffering and people were leaving in droves, and you were worried about getting to that level, then yeah, you could do that the following year and set it higher, but.
We can set it each year.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's just an annual thing you do every January, yeah,
Okay.
by statute.
Other discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carries. tuition rates, Peggy.
Yep, and that's tuition, so every year you have to vote on tuition for the following year. Currently, we charge kindergarten through elementary at $18,928. I am proposing a 4% increase to $19,600. Secondary is currently at $21,972, and again, I'm proposing a 4% increase to $22,850. I will say that doing the calculations, you could go up to as much as $25,000 for the secondary. Currently, we are pretty average in line with this, with most of the schools in our area. Brattleboro was definitely lower. We've been right in line with Burton historically, and I expect they haven't announced their tuition rate yet, but I think it's going to be close. So when it comes to, say, River Valley students making a choice, or not that parents are considering that, but I would suggest staying in line with that number. So $22,850 is what I'm suggesting for secondary, $19,600 for elementary.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, motion and second. Do we have discussion on the tuition rates? None? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And you have principal reports in the packet. Are there questions for the principals? We will not be getting verbal reports. Thank you for putting your reports together. We appreciate it. There will be no verbal superintendent's report. Do we have any questions?
So one little thing is that there is an SU board meeting coming up.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I got.
Questions for the superintendent about his report? All right, looking at the minutes. Somebody want to make a motion on our minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of 12/8/2025.
Motion is second. Any corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, correspondence. Yes, the correspondence are in your packet and they are uploaded as part of the board.
There may be one missing that I was just informed about via text while we were sitting here, is that there was something from the WCEA, the union, which I was told was sent to you and me on January 1st. I can't find it in my email.
I say I don't have one.
So I'm gonna follow up with the union president tomorrow and see if I've been well informed on it. So I'll get back to the board if there is something. If there is, I'll
Okay,
forward it on.
I haven't seen one, so
Okay.
if you missed it, I missed it as well. So.
Okay, so my apologies if that's the case. I'll get it forwarded to the board if I can locate it tomorrow.
Okay. Financials, Joe, Dana, who took financials?
Both of us.
All right.
Yeah.
Who wants it?
I'll do it. Need approval for pay order 39 for $256.82. Pay order 40 for $279,657.75. Pay order 41 for $3,876.73. Pay order 43 for $6,000. Pay order 44 for $55,266.86. Pay order 45 for $66,476.78. And the last one, pay order 47 for $261,564.49.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the pay orders. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? The motion carries. It looks like I have one public comment on the board. Catherine, do you have another public comment you'd like to make before we adjourn?
I do. I
Go ahead.
do. I won't be as soapboxy, I promise. Regarding the contracts and the position that is no longer, was that a contract up? Was it non-contractual? Was it not a contractual position? And my second part of my question, there are some administrative salary increases as well. Are all of those contractually obliged under the union? And are all of the increases for insurance premiums contractually obliged under the union negotiations?
So I believe the last two questions are yes. I don't fully understand what the first question is.
You said you did away with one position, or potentially two positions, and then hired another person or moved one of those people into just a singular position. I believe you said you merged two positions.
Are we talking about the West River budget or the SU budget?
SU.
So the SU budget, during the reorganization, we had, trying to remember exactly how we phrased it, but there were two positions that no longer exist. The assistant to the special ed director and the equity coordinator. We created, three positions and a curriculum coordinator. And we created a director of SEL equity, and we created the director of MTSS.
For that singular position.
Yeah, so it was a net loss of one administrative position at the SU.
So the initial two positions, were they contract positions and the contract was up? Were they non-contractual positions? I'm just trying to figure out, there are two line items in the SU budget for 5.5% salary increases, and are they all contractual? Because
So-
the administration, are they part of the union too?
No, they're not, but different administrators have different contracts with different terms, so it's hard for me to answer that universally. The two positions that went away, one of the people the position, because it was changed into a director level, that person chose not to apply for it and left, and the other position was vacant.
Yes.
Does that answer the question?
I think just because I've looked at the two line items, they're just pure salary increases. I think it would be very helpful to get more granular. Is there an option to get more granular details?
I can sit with
I
you.
don't want to take your time.
Yeah, I can talk offline with you a little bit about it, but it's hard to get granular on the SU budget because, as Heidi had mentioned earlier, we took 4 budgets and merged into 2. And so there were some pieces and parts of people that were put in new places. And so what you see as an increase might not be a straight salary increase. It could be an FTE shift, which could account for something that is different. So it's hard to really know. We did that because it has been unclear in the past. And the hope is that from this point moving forward, with only 2 budgets and people aren't pieced out between different budgets anymore, that from year to year moving forward, it'll be much cleaner. But this year, to do that merger does have some jumbling happening. So it is a little bit tricky to be 100% clean on that.
And
what's the date of the
potential
SU meeting?
sticker shock.
Next Wednesday night. Yeah.
Next Wednesday night would be a great time to jump on the SU meeting and ask. Because these would be SU questions that should be brought to the SU board, which is next Wednesday at
7 p.m.
7
in this
p.m.
very room. Yep.
Guys, I got my evidence class. It's my midlife crisis.
All right. Thank
Okay,
you.
so Mr. Tebow, if I speak with you, then I might be able to get a more granular, because and what are the steps, my last part of this question, what are the steps of reopening this budget if that's even a potential possibility?
Yes, the SU board can reopen the budget if they vote to reopen the budget.
But they vote to open their own budget.
Yeah, the SU budget is a different model than the standard district budget because it has to be done in advance of district budgets so that the assessments can be built into the district budgets. The SU board members, which is made up of members from all the districts are the ones that vote and approve that budget. It doesn't go in front of the voters, it goes to those elected members of your community that represent each of the districts. So they can reopen their own budget, but that's the mechanism, the only mechanism to make it happen. The challenge is, and the reason it's done first, in addition to the assessments, is that we have 3 districts of the 5 who vote their budgets on town meeting day and therefore have to have those numbers well in advance, whereas this district and River Valleys are later and the timeline isn't quite as tight. But Windham, Stratton, and Marlboro have to have their budgets prepared and finalized so that they can vote on town meeting day. So,
Okay, thank you.
yep,
Thank you so much.
but call my office whenever you like and we can chat.
Okay, thanks.
Looking for
I make a motion to adjourn.
all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.